him the medicine.
He's crazy. He's lost his mind.
They can't help you, Rakes.
We make our own rules.
Rakes take.
We make our own rules.
Rakes take.
He's lost his mind.
Rakes take.
Welcome, everybody, to the first official episode of the Rakes Take 2023 podcast. I am extremely excited. On this show, we are going to do a variety of different things. However, I thought it was very important that we start off with an absolute banger of an interview. So today we are very lucky. We are going to be interviewing, I would call him my protege, but honestly, I think that's a disrespect to him because he's his own man, his own epic trader, Mr. Rongtrades. How you doing, bro?
Pretty good. How you doing?
My man, it's good to have you, bro.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
I'm excited. So this is our first official episode. We have had this podcast in the works for a while. Like I mentioned, I want this to be a little bit more than just a standard generic trading podcast with boring advice. I want us to get to know our guests. I want us to have the opportunity to have an in-depth conversation about who you are as a person, the things that you went through in life, right? How you got into trading, what made you find success in trading, how you were able to become consistent, now becoming a full-time trader, my dude, 100% full-time. So I want to talk through it all. I really do. And since this is our first episode, I like to start it off with a little bit of a tradition. I think that in too many of these podcasts, typically it just gets straight into, tell me how you started trading. Instead, we're going to go back and forth here. I want you to tell me something about you as a kid. Maybe a funny story as a kid. Tell me something about you, because I think in order to know who you are as a trader, we have to know who you are as a person. So Little Ron G. Tell me something about Little Ron G.
Yeah. So one thing that's actually pretty funny is when I was a kid, I want to say around like 2 years old, I was riding in the car with my uncle and my mom, and he actually got cut off in traffic. And he did the usual thing, like, you know, especially in LA, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, this guy cut me off. When my mom looks at him, she's like, what are you doing? Like, he's in the back seat. He's going to say it. He's like, nah, don't worry about it. Like, he's not going to say that. He's young. That just went over his head. Well, little story, but my grandpa was actually a Commodore in a few yacht clubs. So later that night, we were at like a 4 or 5 star yacht club dinner. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was like for him and stuff like that. But I was in a booster seat at the dinner, everything like that. Everything was going good, nice and quiet in there, like restaurants usually are at times.
Yeah.
Well, my uncle happens to drop his fork, right?
Okay.
So little me, listening very well, stands up on my high chair, silent restaurant, and goes, what the fuck? The entire restaurant just stares like, oh my God, this 2-year-old kid just screamed that in the restaurant. My poor mom's probably like, what did I do?
Oh my God. I thought I was a little degen, but you're a little degen, bro. 2 years old screaming, what the fuck in a restaurant?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. So we know now that you are a degen from heart. All right. I love that. That's one hell of a way to start our first podcast. I would say that a funny story, again, we always got to go back and forth here. I got to tell you something about me. And shout out to my parents if they're watching this, particularly my dad. There was a few times in high school where I was out at a party, right? And I went to my parents beforehand and I was like, hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm going out to a party. Might be alcohol there. I don't know. My dad, being the amazing father that he is, would say, hey, if you need a ride home, call me. Be smart. So I called him. He came and picked me up. Little did I know, though, after I called him, man stumbled out of bed before he left, put a frozen pizza in the oven so that when we arrived home, there would be a cooked pizza, the perfect time. He scheduled it out and everything. And that would be one story about my childhood that I feel obligated to tell is that my dad had pizza ready for me when I was drunk at like 16 years old. And Dad, that is one of the greatest moves that anyone has ever pulled.
That is clutch.
Not bad, right?
My mom would always walk in the next day with like a protein shake, stuff like that. Gatorade,
yeah.
Like, you're gonna need it. I'm like,
Dude, it's crazy. I think that like having, and obviously we're going to talk much more about this with like how your parents reacted to you trading trading and stuff like that. But I think like, dude, having a good relationship with your parents is the foundation for everything, right? Like everything, man. Like, especially for us who are, in a position where we don't have traditional jobs, right? Like we're in a very untraditional career that most people fail in. I think that it's just funny how both of us tell those stories about our kids, but it relates back to our family somehow, right? Like it relates back to our parents, the relationship that we had with them. And it wouldn't surprise me if that like contributed towards our success, right? As traders. So, all right. So aside from screaming what the fuck as a 2-year-old, tell me a little bit more about just your story, who you are, high school, college, anything on their sports. Like tell me more about who you are before we start to drive into the trading a little bit.
So even going back to high school, like before that as well, my mom was always a single mom growing up with just me and my brother.
Okay.
And so she did like everything she could to raise us, make sure everything like that. So she worked in the waste industry, and we actually moved houses quite a bit, like every few years.
Okay.
So until high school, when I finally moved there, at that point she was like, all right, we're locking it down. We're not doing this.
That's
anymore.
nice. That
like,
high
you're
school.
staying.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
You got to stick with that group of friends that like, okay, that's
yeah,
nice.
because she finally is like, she's like, you guys just need to we need to settle down. This is it. Like we are staying here, and that's that. Well, I ended up in rural Ohio.
Okay.
So with all of that,
I'm sorry, not to talk shit. I just you hear rural Ohio, it's not, the most,
Yeah. Well, I actually went from a school called a city called Bay Village, which was like higher class, higher end.
Got it. Okay.
Like high school is like thousands of people.
Okay.
And my graduating class where I graduated was, I think, 104.
Like 104 people in the total class?
Yeah, 104.
Okay, so that's rural. That's rural. That's the kind of shit where like people
the fourth largest Amish settlement in the country, rural.
Wow. Okay, 104 people in the graduating class. This is the first place my mind goes. But if they've been hanging out since like kindergarten, all of them must have dated each other at some point.
I mean, yeah,
that's just that feels natural,
town,
right?
Yeah.
Small. Crazy world. All right, so rural Ohio for high school. Tell me more. We'll go. Where next?
Yep. So most people actually start out with the typical jobs like fast food, stuff like that.
Yes.
When I was 11 or 12, I started working on farms.
Okay. Yeah.
That is where I kind of started to generate my work ethic through that, because my stepdad at the time was my mom's boyfriend, grew up as a farmer, everything like that, loved it, and my buddy's farm was right behind the house, so I would work with them all summer. And then I did that all summer long, and then I actually would just go to school, everything like that, and I got into tech schools.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I got into more of the blue collar jobs instead of the traditional route, because all throughout high school, I obviously knew like I'm a smart kid, I know what I'm doing, but
Yes.
I didn't care about like doing well on the tests and getting great grades. Like I was B's, C's, and D's.
Right.
I got enough to pass, but I knew at times that I could easily get grades like to do better.
Yeah.
But
you
it's
just
I
weren't
knew-
passionate about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially growing up in rural Ohio, like surprisingly not a lot of the kids went to college.
Yeah.
But that's a route that I personally didn't take.
Okay. So I just think it's interesting. First of all, I somehow shockingly, I knew that you were in Ohio and that you had some sort of background with farming, but you said something earlier that really struck me, which is like hard work and discipline. If you farmed, it's like, I worked in it. For those who don't know, I studied plant science in college. I worked in agriculture as well. Definitely probably not to the extent that the work that you put in, but I spent a few summers doing field research and doing trials, and that shit is hard work. Like farming, agriculture, like that is manual, hard ass labor. It was Tennessee for me, the humidity wrapped in those fucking cornfields. Like if you can survive working in the field, like straight up manual field labor, I honestly think that it's an experience everybody should go through at some point in life, because it teaches you a level of work ethic that I think not many other places teach you, right? Or not many other fields teach you. So that doesn't surprise me at all, right? Because I'm sure that kind of is like naturally how you and I, so similar, we gravitate towards each other, right? Is that we have this sort of similar work ethic, and it might have been like the foundation of that came from, that farming background, right?
Yeah.
Like that agriculture residence, because that shit is, serious, I'll say it again, that shit is hard work. That shit is not easy.
The craziest part about that is I loved it.
Yeah.
Baling hay, I looked forward to it because it's, like you said, it's hard work. Like it's rewarding in the end.
Dude, that's what people would always ask me, like, Jake, do you even like this shit? I was like, yeah, because I like the tangible result. Like throughout the process of like a growing cycle for corn, for example, we planted that shit, we sprayed that shit, we monitored that shit, and then I saw the end result. Like I loved that portion of it, you know, and it's like a tangible something. It's which I think is actually kind of interesting with trading, because trading, it's kind of like different in a lot of ways, but similar in the way of a tangible result. Like the dollars at the end of the day are tangible. You're kind of able to see your work, you know, in the results and trade. So just an interesting comparison, you know.
Yeah.
But okay, so keep going. I keep interrupting you, but tell me, continue on.
I just, from that farmer background kind of and just the blue collar, I ended up going into tech school.
Okay.
So I actually
tech school, not like big tech, like tech school,
not
like a technical school.
College. Yeah.
Okay, technical college.
Throughout high school, we had a choice. We could either try to take like advanced classes, stuff like that. Since I didn't care about grades, didn't get accepted into those. Didn't work out well. But we had a chance to go to career school, which I actually took up welding. And the reason for that was, it wasn't because I loved welding at first. It was because my parents had a waste company and my stepdad had dumpsters.
Okay.
They needed repair.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, if I learn how to do it, I can save us money. I have a job right there, secured, guaranteed.
It's called work smarter, not harder.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So I started to do that, and then I really looked into it. And I'm like, wow, this stuff's kind of cool. Well, what you learn from me is if I have a passion about something, I go above and beyond and do everything I can to excel in that.
Yes, absolutely.
Within the tech school, I got 13 certifications myself, just through welding and all different types of welding and everything like that.
13? How are there 13 certifications for welding?
There's a lot of different types of welding, and it's like all thicknesses, stuff like that, and just because it can be anything from like tiny like exhaust mufflers to buildings.
That makes sense. I guess I didn't think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you never think about it. I just thought there was welders. I didn't know there was different like. Damn. Okay. All right. So you got 13 certificates in that.
Well, I found out that the school paid for the certificates while you were in the school.
Nice.
So I was like, I'm gonna get all these that I can.
Work smarter, not harder.
So I did all of that, and I was like, all right, yeah, I really like this. Well, getting out of high school into that, I got into a lot of welding jobs, and most of them are not easy work.
Yeah.
Like I've welded on excavators, like just stuff like that, and some of them were like production jobs where I'm like, I don't like doing the same thing day in, day out, over and over with no change in results at all. Where that's kind of where I fell in love with trading. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
And just looking at that, I was like, all right, I need to learn more. So I actually went to one of the top welding schools in the country, which happens to be in Cleveland.
Okay.
So I went there.
For some reason, I believe that. I don't know why, but that strikes me as like, okay, that would. Yeah. If you were to look me in the eye and be like, Jake, do you believe that one of the top welding schools in the nation is Cleveland, Ohio? I'd be like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. So
like, yeah, I can see it. What else they got?
Yeah. All right.
But so I did that, and that was actually for pipe welding, and that led me onto the route of welding in the chemical plants.
Okay.
And that's actually what led me up to getting the reserve of capital to get into trading. But the hours there for me, where there was some nights where we had a lock at 16 hours a day that we could work.
Okay.
Because we had shutdowns, and every day the plants were shut down, they would be losing like millions of dollars.
You're right.
So you have to work as long as you possibly can so they quit losing millions of dollars.
Right.
And we would do that, but what wasn't fun is if you worked 16, the only thing they had to guarantee is that you were out for 8.
Wait. So that you would work 16, then you're done for the next 8 hours.
And then you can come back.
Then you can come back in. Okay.
There was a cycle that since, I was younger, a lot of the older guys didn't want to do it. I got put onto this on-call, so every few weeks I'd get on call. Well, it would basically mean like, hey, you're working on a Tuesday, it's the end of the day, something breaks, you're staying. You don't have an option. I love the money and I didn't care. I just threw away my life. I was like, I'm going to save up as much as I can. Well, what sucked was when you would get off work, normal hours, you work your 8 hours, you get home, your head hits the pillow at 11, you get a phone call, something's broken, you have to come in. You were out for 8 hours, you can now work for 16. So you were up for 8, working, out for 8, not working, not sleeping, back in for 16. No sleep.
Holy shit, bro. I didn't know that extent of what you were doing. That's like, because you always talk about like, look at like people oftentimes will tell traders like, oh, if you like work a second job or like put your head down and grind for a little bit, that is putting your head down and fucking grinding. Like those are insane hours.
The craziest part is I didn't hate it at all.
Yeah, really?
Now the hours, like the
is hard
last
to
scenario
like.
I just said, I was like, this sucks.
Yeah,
Like, this is not fun. I don't enjoy this. But what got me out of it is seeing everyone around me was in their like 40s and like later 40s, maybe early 50s. And they looked like they were 70 and they were miserable. And I was like, this is like, I love welding. I have a passion for it, but this is not what I want to do with my body.
Yeah. It's almost like visual motivation. Like you somehow like, and I feel like I felt that a lot at my corporate 9 to 5 as well too. Is like you would see people like I saw my boss at my old job. Sorry, Jen, I don't mean this in a bad way, but she like felt very like stuck in her role. And like, that was like it, you know, like that, like, and it like, I was looking at her and she was, you know, it's not old by any means, but I was just like, it feels like, you know, like, well, you might have a few more levels to reach. Like she doesn't seem fulfilled. She doesn't seem happy. She doesn't seem positive. Like I don't want to be that person stuck somewhere one day. Yeah. And it really did give motivation. So I think it's interesting that you saw people around you and that like that in and of itself gave you motivation. And the motivation alone sounds like it was enough to push you to want to do more, right?
Yeah.
Like and enjoy the time there.
Yeah, and also it's looking at this like from perspective. A lot of people like the 9 to 5 life.
Yeah.
But for me, I didn't realize it until now. But the fact that there was a cap over my head, I could not stand.
Yeah.
Like you can only go so far, but then what do you do when you get there? Your life's just done. You just work for the rest of your life. Like that's not what I wanted.
No, and that's what, again, I think that's an inherent trait of all human beings, right? All human beings want more, but there is this like, I almost think of it as like a Kobe factor on some level, like to the late great Kobe Bryant in the sense of like, there's people who just have higher aspirations, right? Like they have higher goals, higher targets, more that you're aiming for. And if you're in a career where there's a cap and there's a literal top that you can reach, it's hard for people who have that Kobe-like mentality of like, no, like, what do you mean that there's a mountaintop? I want to keep climbing again and again and again, right? I'm going to keep practicing again and again and again. And so I think it's interesting that was sort of, is that transitioning, is that kind of what put you into trading a little bit? Like, is that like, or tell me more, where did you transition from there?
So, and what I actually got in from there was the waste aspect that my family's in as well.
That's right.
My mother owned part of a company where they managed waste nationally for customers.
Right. I remember
like
this.
a lot larger scale, big corporations, stuff like that. Well, they were like, all right, well, we just kind of changed structure a little bit. And I looked at him, I was like, I'll start helping you out a little bit. Next thing you know, I was like, well, I realized I can get a base salary and then I can get commissions on sales. And I did the math. I'm like, I can sit behind a desk for 8 hours a day. And if I do these sales, make this amount, I can make the same I'm making now or more.
Yep.
Without miserable hours, breathing toxic fumes, working with acid, stuff like that every day. As much as I love the career, I was like, in the long term, this can be more beneficial for me. That is also where I learned how to sell. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take any sales courses, anything like that. I spent like 2 hours with my mom teaching me how to sell. Yeah. Because she's been doing it her whole life. Yeah. And then after that, it was just trial and error. Yeah. Just figuring out what worked, what didn't work. And that was where I kind of learned like how to talk to people and everything like that. Because the biggest thing for me is a lot of people spend most of their lives, or they may be fortunate enough early in their life to find out what their drive is, what they want to do. Yeah. I didn't find that until I got fully to trading. Yeah. Which was 2 years ago. So at 23.
Yeah. So like that's just.
And that's still early.
That's still very early. Yeah. Compared to most people, I feel like nowadays will spend their 20s shuffling between 4 or 5 different things. And the hope is that by the time you're 30, you kind of have your passion figured out. It was interesting. I was having a conversation just with some high school friends the other day, and some still feel like they're unsure of like what their end game is, right? And so I think that's one of the things of trading of things I love the most about it, is that like I know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, right? Like same with you, like this is a lifelong, this is something that we'll be doing for the rest of our life that we're so passionate about, right?
Yeah, and I actually think that the fact that I didn't go to college, most people would be like, but it benefited it drastically.
Yeah, you think so? Okay,
just because if you think about it, I could like, I would have loved to have the experience in college.
For sure.
But I know for a fact that I didn't need the degree. I wanted nothing to do, like, it wouldn't have benefited my life at all.
Right, yeah.
In that aspect, just from my perspective. Mm-hmm. But it gave me 4 more years in the real world, understanding myself more, getting through like everything. Like I welded for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by the time I was 21, I was already 6 years deep in welding.
That's crazy. I didn't know that you had started that young. Like
tech school, you start your junior year of high school.
Oh, I didn't know. So I thought this was 18, like post graduation. Wow. Okay, so 16, you started welding. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, damn. So you mentioned that this was how, or these jobs that you had work were how you were able to build a little bit of a reserve to then ultimately start trading.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. So you build a little bit of a reserve. You started to do more of the sales and commit for your mom, right? And for your, so now, how do you discover trading? How does trading become part of this equation for you?
So that story is the typical trader where, I was on Instagram one day and I'm like, this person's doing pretty good at trading. They're posting these consistent results. It caught my attention. Well, then they hit me with, tomorrow we're raising the prices of the Discord. I'm like, got to get in.
Got
it.
it.
Done.
Yep. I'm guilty myself. I'm guilty myself for sure, but okay, so you joined a Discord, and at the time, this one is one that I happened to be a part of as well. That one was some stocks, correct? Yep. So that was the first Discord that you joined. Regardless of that, though, how did trading go in the beginning for you? What was your first experience with it like? And the reason I mainly ask is what pushed you to keep going? Because I know everybody has a rocky start. I've yet to really talk to anybody who didn't have a rocky start trading. So tell me about your start. Was it rocky? And if so, what pushed you to push through that sort of struggle?
So my actual start was a few months before actually joining the Discord. It was during the COVID bottom. I bought shares.
Nice.
Put a couple grand in, turned into a couple more grand. And I was like, all right, this is fun. And then I saw the options thing and I'm like, okay, so I can do more than just buy shares. And I can make more money in higher percentages.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm in. Well,
it's like that devil on your shoulder. You ever heard of weekly options?
Yep. And I did the very, very smart thing of using the entire amount of capital that I just made and putting it into options.
Ooh.
So luckily the first 2 weeks, I remember it was like euphoric. I made $1,000 each week. I was like, on this track, I'm making 52 grand a year in extra. I am living the high life. I'm doing phenomenal. This is so well. And next thing you know, I don't think I saw a green month since then.
Yeah.
For the first 10 or 11 months.
Yeah, it usually always starts that way where it's this like initial sense of massive euphoria, right? Where like, for me, it's like, and that's at least what for me is what pushed through. Because you mentioned that you had several red months afterwards, right? Where you're going through the initial trader struggle, right? That every trader will go through. No matter the room that you're in, I think anybody initial's trading journey, it's going to have some rocks, right? But at least for me, it was similar in the sense that I had those first few weeks of making. So is that what kind of pushed you through? Do you think to, despite having 7 red months or whatever, is that what kind of pushed you through to keep going at it? Or what was it? What was the drive to keep going?
So the biggest thing for me is, one, I'm a huge numbers guy.
Okay.
I love numbers, because business has always been in the back of my head, but I never really put it to work.
Right.
And I'm a huge numbers guy. And I'm stubborn as shit. So I was like, I can't lose this money. I'm going to get it back.
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, I lost more money and more money and more money. And I'm like, I'm not getting that back.
Yeah, that tends to be the theme. If anybody hasn't experienced this before, if you try to make back the specific dollar value that you lost, typically you're going to lose it again, and even worse, and even worse, and even more. So, okay, so you go through, you have a series of tough months. And you and I actually do a one-on-one lesson, a few of them during this stretch of months. I remember this very well. You had purchased 3 lessons, I believe, right? Packages of 3 lessons. And at the time, most of you may know and some of you may not. Before I made the jump to having RakeTrades, my own me, this is me. Before that, I was involved in a variety of different servers, Major League Trading, Simba Stocks, Stock Market Wolf, and in a bunch of these different areas and working in different capacities, one of which was doing one-on-one lessons with people who had purchased and scheduled them. So we did 2 lessons together.
Yep, we did too. Now, most people would be like, well, didn't you say you bought 3?
Yeah. So this is the part of the story that I'm ashamed to admit that after I had come to the conclusion that I was departing and going off to do my own thing, that's a very tricky tightrope to walk. And in order to maintain the relationships that I had with the owners of these other rooms, I I made it very clear that I was not going to respond to a single member's message in order. I was going to do everything extremely clean. So for lack of a better term, I ghosted you pretty bad. It was, yeah.
You left me on red for a while.
Yeah. And the worst part is it wasn't even on red because I didn't even click it because I didn't want, I sent pictures of all of the unread messages. I was like, I haven't read any of them. I'm not responding to any of them. Like, I would never do that, blah, 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 for a variety of different reasons. But literally, it pained my heart because I'll tell you this. You and I did a few lessons together before I ghosted you. We did a few lessons together, and very instantly you could tell. We did lesson 1, and you absorbed the knowledge, and you absorbed our conversation. First of all, you were asking the best questions. You were asking questions that were, because as an educator, I think it's really easy to tell, just to be honest with you all. It's easy to tell based on the type of questions somebody is asking what you would expect out of that student. If you have somebody, and I mean, you now have your own students, you can tell this. If somebody comes into a one-on-one lesson and is asking mostly about signals or about that kind of stuff, it's kind of like, okay, well, I know you're here isn't, your intentions aren't really to learn. You're more worried about making that buck overnight, right? Yep. With you, I remember instantly from lesson 1, you were asking all of the right questions, right? You were asking all of the right stuff. And then we pretty quickly were like, yeah, we need to get on the horn and do number 2. And if I'm not mistaken, in between lesson 1 and 2, you were sending me a bunch of charts, sending me a bunch of examples. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, right? Like,
yep, I was blowing your messages up. I remember still to this day, it like one of the first euphoric moments for me as like I'm getting this is in the morning I sent you GM as a day trade. Yeah. And I was like, I like this chart from everything you've taught me. This is after one lesson.
Lesson.
1 hour.
Yeah.
I'm sending Jake charts. Like, this is it. This is a solid trade. You posted that on your watch list that day. I was like, it's it. Mm-hmm. This is my career. I'm making it.
Literally. And for those of you who know me, most of you know I don't typically add things to my watch list that are from other people's. I make my watch list on my own. I have my system. But Ron messaged me and he said, hey, yo, GM looks good. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, I see what he's seeing. Like, that shit looks good. Like, that looks good. So it was between lessons 1 and 2 that we did on our one-on-one lessons where I had already just seen the crazy growth. We do our second lesson, and I think we just really kind of hammer down more of what we had talked about before. The strategic approach that we have to the market, the psychological approach to the market. And then in between our second and third lesson is when I go ghost mode. And in order to maintain good relationships with all of the other server owners that I worked with, I went ghost mode on everybody. I went silent for about 2 months, no social media. And then I was thinking, you and a couple others, you seeked out. You were reaching out, trying to find. Yeah. I do remember. To be fair, I did message the other server owners, and I was like, "Hey, like this person has an unused lesson. Make sure somebody takes care of it." But I don't think you were looking to do. Yeah.
It's kind of like going to like a 5-star restaurant, and they're like, "Sorry, we're full," but like McDonald's is down the road, and you're like, "I don't want that. Like I came for this."
Oh God, that was meant in the best way possible. No, but okay. So I remember we had that little hiatus, and then within that hiatus break is when I launched RakeTrades LLC. So we launched our first ever. Most people don't know this, but I had my Instagram first like 3 months before I launched anything from it. Right. So I wanted to make sure like really do it the right way. I wanted to make sure that I was not leaving anyone behind, doing it in a way that was just the right way, right? Doing everything in the right way. We launched Mastermind 1.0, very first ever mentorship program. Pretty sure you were the first person to sign up. You were waiting and ready.
As soon as I found out you were doing it, I was like, I don't care when you're doing it, what it is, what it costs. I'm doing it. Here's what you need.
So it's just funny because you had that mindset towards taking the mastermind, and then skip a few months ahead, and that's literally the mindset we had towards you and getting you as to be a part of the team, and then on the moderator team is literally in my head. I was like, I don't want this kid to go to any other disc. I don't want him to be a free agent, right? Like theoretically, he's a free agent right now. Somebody could come in, give a good offer, and I would have to respect, you know. And so pretty quickly after taking the first mastermind, I want to say it was probably a month after finishing it, because that one went into February. Probably a month after finishing it, we noticed just the success you were having. Not only that, but then also the activity levels that you had in the chat, the help that you were providing to people. And pretty quickly, almost just about a year ago today, we said Ron is no longer a student of ours. Ron is now a team member, right? We need to have Ron on the team. And to this day, that's one of the best decisions of my life, bro. It has been so great to have you with us. But I want to talk a little bit about how, because obviously you participate in the mastermind. We trade the same system, right? You trade the same strategic approach that I use, but you've added your own little flares and pieces of elements to it. Tell me, what do you trade mostly on a daily basis, right? Are you an options guy? Are you trading, like what do you trade mostly?
So for me, I mainly prioritize towards futures, but I also like trading options. Now, the one thing that's drastically different is you may trade a different option, like different ticker from one day to the next to the next.
Yeah, right.
Where I will find maybe one or two trades that look good for a few weeks or like a month or something like that. And that is what I'm sticking to.
And you really focus on that name, right?
Yes.
See, and I think that makes, like you said, it's just interesting because, again, we use the same strategy. You ask your levels, my levels, our buy, sell setups, whatever the case, we use the same strategy, but it's implemented in a completely different way, right? So for me, each day I'm looking at different individual names to trade. I like to find relative strength, relative weakness. There will definitely be focus names for the week and stuff, but usually for me, it's not on like a month-long basis. So for you, you will more look at a name and say, okay, I'm looking to not necessarily swing trade this, but I'm looking for this like a monthly time frame move almost. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, for the most part, because the one way you can look at it is if you're picturing this larger move in it, like you're like, right, this can make this massive move. There's going to be two options. You're either going to sit there and take a few trades trying to wait for that move to happen, or you may catch multiple trades within that. So you may either take a few small losses, small wins, and then eventually catch that euphoric move, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Or throughout the entire way up, you're catching pretty solid moves the entire time. You understand how that ticker works and how to trade it from a day-to-day perspective. So come week 2 or 3, you know typically, all right, it's going to hit this level. It should pull back to here.
Right, okay.
And then I can look for a new entry.
Right.
You don't need to try to like swing for a month, anything like that. You just catch what you can, step out of the way, and then look for a new one.
Look for a new entry, but still within that larger same thesis, right? So say, for example, you're looking for XOM to go from 50 to 80, right? Which is just a random number I'm throwing out there. But you, rather than saying, hey, I'm going to swing for this whole move, you're going to look now to piece that out a little bit. Say, hey, I'm going to look to catch an initial entry, and when the chart tells me to exit, I'll exit, and then wait for a pullback on a new entry.
Yep, and that's actually exactly how I traded that exact name last September.
So there's a reason I named that one specifically, because I was going to ask for an example. So tell me something, if you remember, like what kind of move did XOM make that allowed you? Because I remember, man, you nailed that one. That was your biggest day of last year, right? Was on
my biggest month.
Biggest month. Okay. Yeah. So how much was that? What was that?
So that month in total, I think profit came out to around 12 to 13,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like the numbers. I remember telling you, you're like, you made how much? I'm like,
yeah.
I'm still shocked.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's like a lot of money, man. $13,000 in a month. Like you think about it, at least for me, when I got my first job out of college, my 9 to 5, I was $55,000 a year, right? So $13,000, and my paychecks I was getting were like $1,600, like $3,000 a month. A $13,000 a month would have just been life-changing, bro. Yeah, that was killer. And honestly, September 2022 was also like not a like super friendly market time. Like there was market conditions in 2021 where I think it could have been, I mean, and I took advantage of those personally for sure too, but I think it's easy to have had big months in like a year like 2021. September 2022 was not like that was a trick. 2022 is tricky conditions, and that was, you were still able to come out of it with the $13,000 a month. God damn. All right, so tell me a little bit about that trade and that move specifically. Did you have several different XOM trades, right? Like you mentioned, you didn't just capture a big move. So do you remember how one was to where? Tell me a little bit more about that trade.
So this is where I kind of honed in on how to trade these longer moves. And it sounds crazy, but what I was doing is I was taking multiple like expirations.
Okay.
And potentially multiple strikes at sometimes too.
Okay.
So like let's say I'm coming into the week on a Monday. I'm going to take, and I love the setup. It's A+. I know there's a very strong chance it's going to work. I'm going to take a month out contract, put some size in that. I'm going to take probably like a 2 week out and then a weekly.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would try my best to not touch the month out.
Yeah.
We all know how well that works. Once you start trimming, it's like, all right, click, 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 click. Next thing you know, you're out. You're like, oh, damn.
Damn amount of contracts.
Yeah, but the goal of that was for me to trade the weekly, and next thing you know, the 2 week out is risk free.
Right. Okay.
So then as you're trimming the 2 week out, the monthly's risk free.
Okay. Yeah.
So next thing you know, you just because you took this weekly trade, all of your other trades are completely risk free, and everything else is just additional on the top.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So you built a little bit of like a cushion, one might call it, with the weekly, right? You built a little bit of a cushion trading the weekly chart. Now, the nice thing about that is that let's say that trade had gone against you, right? Let's say that XOM trade had failed. Let's say that the initial entry, right? That initial first part, you have most of your size in the month out position.
Yep.
That's not going to, I mean, if any of you have traded options for a decent amount of time, a pullback on a weekly option may destroy it. A pullback on a month out long option is going to pull back like a norm, like a very reasonable pullback. So I like that. So you were able to kind of have your initial risks still defined, right? By having it, you know where you'd stop out, you know how much you'd be risking if that stop were to hit, but then you've kind of laddered the upside in a sense, right?
Yep.
And I like that. I think it's interesting. I see. I knew you had traded further out contracts, but I wasn't necessarily until I knew it, but I wasn't sure of like formally of this laddering system, so to speak. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and then there was times where like, okay, like this day I'm expecting a larger move for the week, so I would go that system.
Right.
And then like later in the week, if I see a pullback on like a day and I'm like, all right, it hit this level, we can trade. I may only take like weeklies at that point, or next week's. I'm not going to take all those contracts.
Right.
When I take that larger of size, it's when everything's lining up and I'm like, this is A+, and we're just going to ride.
So tell me a little bit about what would be some traits of an A plus setup to you? Like, because I think that's one of the things that people talk about a lot, right? And obviously we spill our guts on these in our mastermind, but what would be some traits of an A plus that you think that people should be focusing on?
So the biggest thing for me that a lot of people don't really pay too much attention to a lot of times with day trades is the weekly charts.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where I put almost all of my emphasis on.
Literally, if Ron G's posting a chart in the chat, it's pretty much a weekly chart. Yeah.
But just because if you look at it, like, all right, you see the weekly, like maybe we're potentially reversing, setting some type of setup. But if you look back at the daily and it's just like a beautiful setup on the daily that you can get in on, you know, if that continues, the weekly is going to end up even more bullish. And next thing you know, you're in a few week out call and the weekly hasn't even like actually triggered or set
It hasn't
up
even made that move yet, right? Exactly. Okay. So in layman's terms, you would say that shifting out to those longer time frames, right, would be a good gear for people for your A plus setups, right?
Yeah.
Then when you would say, so you have the time frames aligning, and I think that for anybody out there, that should be trading 101. Whoever your educator is out there, whoever is your mentor, they should drill it into your brain to put these longer time frames first. I mean, seriously, not enough people do that. If anyone's too focused on the 1 minute chart, it's a mistake. But okay, so you found your A plus setups. Tell me something else about them, right? Because the time frames aligning. What would you say on an A plus setup? You have the weekly chart and the daily chart aligning. Is it then a combination of the contract selection that you think is kind of how you have that edge where?
Yep. So everything with that, this is actually something that when you said we were in Simba strategy, I learned from him is I want to be like out of the money that's going to go in the money.
Yeah.
And that's something that he really beat down and I listened to.
And he's very right on that. Yeah.
Because that is where your R multiple is going to be astronomical.
Yeah. I think it's the gamma of the options that ends up, especially as you get closer to expiration. And especially the IV will start playing in your favor. But so that at the money to in the money, right?
Yeah.
I
mean, to me, that should be the goal for any.
That should be the goal. I agree. I think that for all of like the trades, I think that if you're wondering how to choose an option strike price, I think that a baseline, a good, like, no matter what, is at your target, you would want that strike to be in the money, right? Like most of the time you're not going to start out at your target. So you're going to be choosing an at the money or out of the money contract, but you want your contract to end in the money. That going from at to in is the biggest expansion.
Yeah.
It allows for the most profit, I would say.
Yeah. And just because also what a lot of people don't realize is once you get in the money, you really don't fight time as much. And that is the number one thing that like got me as a trader is when I was trying to fight time.
Yeah. Fighting time is, look, here's just one way I'll put it. Father Time always wins, bitch, right? No matter what, Father Time is undefeated, right? So if you have out of the money weeklies that have no intrinsic value, look, I mean, I'm the first to tell you that I have been a part of many of those that have not ended well. So we know that your A+ setups are going to be based on these longer time frames, right? You're usually going to be looking for relative strength, relative weakness. I know the XOM trade was a relative strength trade, correct?
Yeah. Well, I believe that was actually going to be a reversal.
That was a reversal trade.
Yeah,
okay.
It was mainly like looking at the bottom, but at the same time, a lot of people are like, all right, you were trading the reversal. But when I trade oil options, I'm not only basing it off of just XOM, you can also base it off of ES because that helps move it.
Yep.
And CL, which is oil futures.
Yep. So you.
So if you get all three of those aligned, even on some type of daily structure, to me, that is going to be almost A+ no matter what.
Right. Because you have the individual stock, which follows both, not necessarily follows, but can gain benefit from both the S&P and the oil's futures market. So I like that. If you have all three of those aligned. Okay. So we first got the longer time frames and that either relative strength or the potential finding that reversal. You have all three of the individual name, the CL, when you're trading oil at least lined up. So, and you like to use a little bit of longer out and that laddering options expiration we've talked about. So on a day-to-day basis, if that would be more of your option strategy, so to speak, right? So on a day-to-day basis, are you then using futures as the main vehicle for day trading? Do you day trade? Are you mostly a swing trader? Tell me a little bit more about how you use futures in conjunction with those A+ option setups.
So the biggest thing, I actually just started implementing this more this year, is I've leaned more towards options as like looking for, it can be a day trade, but I really want to swing this.
Really want the big move.
Especially with how this market is, like you don't need to try to day trade every single day because if you catch the big move, then you can catch one of those a week or one a
week and you're good. You're good.
I think one thing a lot of people overlook is you catch one solid 100% trade a week or even every 2 weeks. If you have the right amount of capital into that for your position, you are set. Like you don't need more.
It's crazy to me because people always talk about risk reward, right? And they talk like they know what they're talking about. But then when the end of the day comes, people don't understand that a 4-to-1 risk to reward is better than any, getting a 4-to-1 means that you could risk 2% of your account to make 8% of your account in one trade. 8%. And that's a very reasonable because your risk on that side would only be 2% if you can find that 4-to-1, right? So absolutely, I could not agree with more with you. And the other thing I'll say that you mentioned is day trading options every single day is fucking stressful. Like it's a stressful ass job, bro. Like my hair is gray for a damn reason.
Yep.
Like that shit is stressful. So, okay, so you trade options most of the time. If it ends up a day trade, it ends up a day trade, but most of the time aiming for a swing, right?
Yeah.
So then on a day-to-day basis, are you checking the market every single day? Are you more swing trading, right? But you're still, I would say you're using futures, right? As that instrument. All right, tell me more.
So one thing I actually did want to touch real quick, and then we can get back to it later, is you talked about risk to reward.
Yeah.
One thing no one really pays attention to is the risk to reward for your time.
Yes, bro.
We can dive into that a little later.
No,
but
dive into it now.
No one pays attention to the risk to reward for your time.
Yeah.
And one way to look at that is if you catch 100% trade a week, there's a chance maybe, especially with a swing trade, you're probably doing 2 hours worth of work because you find your entry and then you set alerts, check charts every once in a while, and then when you need to, you execute. If you're day trading, you're spending 2-3 hours a day, maybe more. Most traders, especially newer traders, when I was a newer trader, I would be in front of that chart from 9:30 until 4, no matter what.
Every day.
But once you understand the risk to reward perspective on your time and the value of that, it's insane. Because one thing that I actually talk to people when I'm doing my teaching is you look at it and you're like, all right, So you made $500 within the first 15 minutes of the day, or even hour of the day, right? Well, you want more, you want like 600, something like that. So you spend the next 5 hours trying to make that extra $100. You just took your time from 500 an hour to whatever that math ends out in the end if you get to 600.
Yeah.
So you just went from 500 an hour to 100 an hour.
And it's a huge, people don't understand that. That's the math behind it. And I preach this and I fully believe it, as you mentioned. Anybody who starts trading, whether you're profitable or not, the second you start trading, your time has value on it now, right? Because suddenly you are learning a skill that is so profitable long-term, so like it's a lifelong skill where you can make so much that all of a sudden your time now actually has value on it. And if you don't put a number to it, if you aren't able to do the math behind it, then you ultimately end up inefficiently using your time, right? Yeah. Like, I think that's a huge value. The risk, hear it from Ranji here first, the risk reward on your time.
Yep, because everyone always wants, like, a lot of people say, oh, you need screen time, you need screen time, you need screen time. There's a difference between quality and quantity.
Yes.
You can have the quantity of screen time all you want, but if it's not quality, you're not going to learn anything.
If you're watching shitty sideways choppy charts, like you're going to learn how to see shitty sideways choppy charts. Okay, good for you.
While getting more gray hair.
Yeah, literally. Okay. Me with my lot of gray hairs. Don't be attacking me over here, Ron. I swear.
Hey, I got a couple growing in.
Oh, man. So I could not agree more. I think that as human beings, we have to start respecting our time more, because that's the end game for all of this, right? The end game for not only traders, but literally it's more applicable to non-traders. The end game for people, normal 9-to-5 live people, is like to get their time back at the end, right? Is to retire at 60 and then have like that freedom and free time at 60, right? Like, I think as traders, we just kind of put it on ourselves and on our shoulders to recognize that earlier on in our life and be like, hey, I want that time back now, right? And here's a method for me to do it, right?
Yep. And a lot of people put too much thought in trading on this is the way to get this massive amount of income, this and that. Yes, it can be it, but the biggest thing is it's a way to get back your time. Because you can be perfectly comfortable making $60,000 a year, working a 9-to-5, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. Everyone did it at one point. Well, most people did.
Yeah.
But if you get into trading, a lot of people are like, 60 grand's not enough. But you liked it when you worked 8 hours a day, but now you're only working 2, and now all of a sudden it's not enough, and you have 6 extra hours a day to do whatever you want.
And it's not only to do whatever you want, but you can put that time towards other ways of making money, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you just like, oh, I trade for 2 hours a day, then I go like watch Netflix the rest of the day, which sometimes that's me, but a lot of time. But the whole point is that like that gives you that freedom to then go and explore other passions. I know that you're still spending some time working with other students one-on-one. I know that you're still spending time here and there working at the Waffle with your family, right? Yep. So I know that there's bits and pieces that you're able to kind of fill your time with, because trading only occupies such a small window, right? Like, it really is such a small window. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it.
And that's the craziest part for me, is anytime I'm finding myself in a rut, we were talking about this earlier, is when I forget that.
Yes.
And when I forget, you only need this amount of time allocated. And when I try to use more time to make more money, I give back all the money I just made.
Yeah, and it's funny because right before we started, one of the things that Ron and I were talking about earlier is that he was stuck in a little bit of rut, and what he saw was that he was staying at his desk all day, right? You were staying at the desk all day. I didn't say this to you in the moment, but bro, like earlier these past few like months, I've found the same thing. Like, there are the days where I finish up, and for me, like, it tends to be like 8:30, and I'll go out and I'll like sit in my balcony and sit in the sun and smoke a joint. Those are the best days, right? Like, and those are the days I'm feeling good. And it's always when I end up, it's just funny that smoking a joint is my reference point, but when I end up smoking my first joint of the day, like at my desk, it's usually because I'm anxious and I'm still in a trade and I'm still watching, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, damn. It always hits me at the end of the day. And it's like, damn, bro, like, this isn't what makes you happy, right? Like, I think we lose sight of that often as traders, is we lose sight of like genuinely what makes you happy, right? Like what gives you fulfillment. A winning trade might give you a shot of dopamine in the moment, the money you make might help contribute to your happiness, but it won't fulfill you, right? Like it won't make you happy in and of itself. So don't sit at the damn desk all day, right? Like don't put it's literally like us looking and like choosing, like making the bad decision like it's right in front of us, right? It's like, you know, it's like you have like a toxic ex right there and you just like choose, you're like, yeah, no, I'm gonna get back. Like I'm gonna make the, I'm gonna make the conscious decision.
I need to stop this, but I can't.
But like I literally can't, right? Like, oh my goodness. So, okay, so let's circle back a little bit because we were talking about options and how then kind of deteriorated into a little bit of trading less, getting our time back. That being said, I do know you still are a day trader in and of itself, right? You are still trading each day. Each day you're performing market analysis. So can you walk me through your morning routine a little bit and how that relates to what you're going to trade that day? Is that where futures come into play? Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. So typically my like morning routine, I actually got this part from you, and every single morning, without a doubt, I turn on the bath on cold and I stick my head under it.
Yeah.
Mainly it's just like slightly to wake me up, and then also just like, all right, let's go. The day starting. We need to actually get ourselves together. And then right after that,
it's my bitch version of the cold plunge.
Exactly. So everyone else has these like extravagant routines, like they need to stretch, yoga, go work out, do something like that. I literally walk right into the kitchen after that, make coffee, go to the desk.
Okay. So what time do you wake up? What time would you wake up usually?
So luckily East Coast. Yeah. So it depends. If I need to do something before, I'll wake up at like 7:30. But to be honest, usually like 8 or 8:30.
8 or 30. Okay, so that allows you to go to coffee, go get some coffee, head straight to the desk, and from there it's analysis time, right?
Yeah.
It starts to break down the markets. So break that down for a little bit. What are you looking for each morning, and what are you paying attention to? What's the first things you check?
Yeah, so the very first thing is I'm going to look at the major indexes, typically ES, and I'm just going to be like, all right, what should happen today and like what can we expect? It's not like what needs to happen, but what should and can.
Right. So laying out some potential scenarios.
Yeah, and one thing I always love to do, and in the group, obviously, you know, I post my analysis, bullish and bearish every single day.
Always.
The reason I do that is because one, it doesn't lock me in tunnel vision, and it gives me multiple scenarios. So in case like this doesn't work, I can look at this. So it leaves my mind more open.
Leaves your mind more open-minded so that you're not biased and tunnel vision, right? Which is a piece of advice that many give, but I think that the hard part about it is even if you create a bull and bear scenario for the day, sometimes there is still that underlying bias in you, right? Like, do you feel that sometimes?
Yeah, and actually, this is where I differ from a lot of traders is I don't believe you can't trade without a bias. I believe you need to avoid being tunnel visioned.
Okay.
To me, there's a line there.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
if you think about it, if you're long, you're biased.
Yeah.
If you're short, you're biased.
You always have a bias.
Yeah, no matter what, there's a bias. So a lot of people be like, you can't have a bias. You need to be a robot. We're not robots. Like,
You're not robots.
Newsflash, we're humans. We're not robots.
We're not robots.
So you're going to have some type of bias. It's how big of a bias and can you control that? And the biggest way to control that is being able to be wrong.
Being able to be Ron G, as one might say.
Yeah.
But okay, so I like that way that you phrase that, where bias is okay because bias is inevitable, right? Like it's an inevitable thing to be dealing with as a trader. We are going to be looking for certain situations to play out more than others. However, the goal should be to remain not tunnel visioned, right? I think that's a huge way to phrase it in a way to think about it. Because if you're biased, you could either just have a long or a short, right? Like you could theoretically be biased just for having that position. But the tunnel vision is where you basically refuse to admit when you're wrong, right? Like that would be getting stuck in a position where you're like, I'm right no matter what, right? So, okay, so you come into each day. I love that. I'm stealing that line, by the way. I will always credit you, of course.
Gotta give the credit.
But I will definitely be stealing that and going credit to Mr. Ron G. So each morning, so you wake up, you will then create some scenarios for the major indexes. Do you check individual names anymore? Do you go through them, or no?
So the main thing for me is during the week, or like in the beginning of the week, like Monday or even Sunday. Sunday, I typically do my weekly analysis.
Right.
I'll look at all the tickers on my watch, like on my actual watch list that I have, and then I'll look at the indexes. If I expect some quality movement, I'll look at individual names. Or if I see something that's like, okay, this has a lot of potential, I'll be
Yeah.
like, that's reasonable to look at every morning. Now, what I do there though is what I mark down Sunday, because on TradingView you can mark like color code things.
Yeah.
And I'll do that, and like the names on there are the only ones I will check on a day to day.
Got it.
So I'll take my
Okay.
list from like 46 to like 4.
Right, and it'll really crank down. So at the beginning of the week, you'll essentially say, hey, NVIDIA, for example, is a focus name this week. That will get a yellow color with some of your other yellow colors like ES.
Yep.
And then you'll check those every day.
Oh.
Okay. And then on a day-to-day basis, after you've created your game plan, after you've scanned through some individual names, right? From there, is it day trading the futures, right? You won't day trade options, but you'll look to kind of follow that game plan using futures.
Yep. So if I do see like some type of like really quality setup that's basically like you can get in this, or like you need to, you don't have to obviously, but
Yeah.
you need to, then I'm okay taking options trades. And then obviously you know how I work my expirations. We can talk about
Right,
that as
yeah,
well and
yeah.
everything. But for me, primarily day trading is futures.
Day trading is futures. Okay. So tell me a little bit like why. Why? Many of you might already know some advantages to futures, but especially for those who don't, what are some of the things that you like about trading futures versus options?
I don't have to fight time. That is the biggest thing. So for me, even if it's like Thursday, Friday, like, yeah, we can talk about it. Like, I typically don't trade 0 days. I don't trade like 1 day outs most of the time, unless it's smaller position. I have high confidence, just because the number one thing that I hate is having my trade work out and I lose money because it didn't work out fast enough.
Yeah. Yep.
That is what drove me away from any short-term expiration and also to futures.
Yep. 1,000%. Those short-term ones, they can pay well, but the FOMO that can come from being in the trade and then watching it work after your contract has expired. I think it was a few weeks ago, I had a swing trade on NVIDIA and I swung it like Wednesday into Thursday night and it didn't work, but then Thursday into Friday it made that move, right? But I was just one strike too far out of the money. And yeah, those are tough. Those are the ones that will really like, they can leave you with a sour taste in your mouth, right? Where it's like, damn, like, is this what I was really aiming for on this trade, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this what I really want to be doing? So I think it's interesting that you've sort of taken those experiences you've had and now shifted into futures. So futures, you're not fighting time. What are some other things that you like about futures? Some positives to them.
So the nicest part for me is your trade, like our strategy is price action, right?
Yes.
That's it. We don't use the indicators, none of that. We avoid everything that we can. It's price action. So the best thing for futures is what we're trading is price action. There's no Greeks. There's nothing else. You're not fighting delta, gamma, any of that. Like if VIX is up, especially now when VIX goes from 20 to like 28 in a day, options are miserable to trade unless you're absolutely right. Even if you are, they're expensive.
They're very expensive.
Pricing
yes.
of futures doesn't change.
And no matter what, it just stays the same. Yep.
The cost you get in the trades is the exact same no matter what the price is at, no matter like if ES is at 5,000 or 3,000, it's the same.
It's the same cost to get in the trade. And also your profit and loss in the trade doesn't fluctuate the way options do, correct?
Yep.
So it moves on more of a point-to-point basis. If it goes up 10 points, you're up a standard amount, right? It's a fixed standard number, as opposed to options will have that sort of variable factor where you might not know exactly how much you'll be up when the move occurs due to the variety of different factors, right? Due to the expiration, due to the IV, due to theta, right? So I think that there are definitely some big, big advantages to futures, and I'm glad to see that you've kind of like found a niche in them. That.
It's nice too because I love ES is my bae, my bread and butter. It's everything, and I just from posting that analysis, I know pretty much how it should move that day.
Right.
There are times I'm wrong, but lately I've been very happy with the results.
Yeah.
The TA.
And you've been focused and locked in on ES and its movement. And I got to say, anybody who's in the Discord and checks the TA alerts channel where Ron posts his analysis, it speaks for itself, right? Like it is truly like on point, right? Like it really is. So it's been special to see you kind of take this journey from struggling a little bit when we were first doing our lessons to then, holy crap, this stuff is starting to click, to then Mastermind 1.0, holy shit, I really know what I'm doing, to then the following months after that is where you kind of were like, okay, here's what I learned in the program, but here's who I am as a person, and here's how I trade best using that same system. Let me conform and let me try and mold myself to how you trade this. I think that's the coolest part about this, is that no matter the system, no matter the strategy, no matter what, it all comes back down to who you are as a person. And you've now found a system that works for you, right? You've now found a combination of trading options, a combination of trading futures that all work for you, right? And like, it's just it's a proud thing for me to see, I gotta admit.
Yeah, and it's one thing that a lot of people actually overlook, because like you said, I found my system that works best for me. So when we start to look at everything like that, people may look at you and be like, you are making an astronomical amount of money. Like, you do very well trading, everything like that. Well, they're like, all right, I want to trade just like Jake, trade the exact same trades he trades and everything like that. Well, to be honest, I love you, but I don't take any signals at all. And you know that.
Oh no, I know you don't. Yeah.
I
know
just
you don't.
because for me, the very first reason I started doing that is because I'm not going to grow myself taking someone else's trades. Yeah. I'm in this for the longevity. I need to focus on myself.
1,000%.
If I lose money, I want it to be because I found the analysis, I was wrong, and I can learn from that. I don't want to have to look at someone and be like, hey, what did you see? So I can see why it didn't work and everything like that.
Right.
Another reason I trade why I do is because one thing that I realized is the way you trade is going to be based off your personality as well. Yes. A lot of people who are more hyperactive, you will find, or have they're very hands-on, quick. They will want those day trades, the 0 days, the quick in and outs. They can handle the volatility, everything like that. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. ADHD to the max, baby.
Yeah. Where I'm like, yeah, my attention span, like at times it's iffy, but I would rather have the comfort of like, all right, I'm in, I can let this coast for a little bit, even if it's just a few hours. And then you end up hitting the numbers, you take your profits, everything like that. I would rather have that gentle coast instead of the massive fluctuations. Right.
Which I think will not only save you from the contract price fluctuations, but the emotional fluctuations. Yeah. Like I won't lie, I'm like I said, I'm a little bit of a degenerate at heart. So I love trading weeklies. I think I found a really profitable way to do so. But my stress levels are for sure higher than somebody who takes your approach, where it just seems like it's a little less actively managed, right? Like it's not, that's a bad way, not as actively managed, but it's the longer term positions will allow you to do that, right? It's just, there's less fluctuations in the contracts and your emotions.
And the biggest thing too is there's times where I may take the same style trade as you on the same name, stuff like that, but the difference is the expirations. Yeah,
like we both traded Meta the other, last week, or
I think 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Yeah. I missed it on that Tuesday, and you caught it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That was a fire trade, by the way.
Thank you.
That was a killer trade. How much did you make on that one? That one was like almost $1,000, right?
That one between the two accounts, yes.
Okay.
I believe it was just over 1,000.
Okay, nice.
And then there was actually the other trade 2 weeks ago with SPY where we both caught trades that I think you caught Meta that day. I caught SPY.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I got the same move out of it. Yeah. Okay. Fuck yeah, bro. So now we've taken through your journey a little bit, right? We've gone through how you started off, first of all, who you are as a person, which is my fucking man, a phenomenal human being. So grateful just to have you in our world. Then we talked about how Mastermind 1 was a big portion of your program, how you then evolved and started to have your own sort of twist and flair on the system. Now, something that you have recently started doing as well is mentoring people, doing one-on-one lessons with former Mastermind students, taking people, working with them on a deeper level than the class itself does. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about why you do that, how you found happiness. Just tell me about it.
So the biggest thing with that is, obviously I got in trading at first. I was like, this is cool. I really love it. Well, when I took the Mastermind, not only was it, I can say, the biggest risk to reward of my entire life, just because like you can see the results from the investment.
Yes.
But you really sparked that passion in me, because throughout my entire life, what I've realized is I've wanted to like help people.
Yeah.
And I never really knew how like I wanted to do that, because you can really have a passion for helping people, but you don't like, there's many ways you can do it, and like you want to impact people's lives, but like people be nurses, stuff like that. Well, for me, I realized, hey, if I learn this, I can teach people.
Yeah.
And this could be the thing. Like if I teach someone to do this successfully, this could change generations.
Yeah, literally. It could be a generation changing skill that you are teaching for someone.
So for me, and it's kind of weird because a lot of people would be like, yeah, P&L is awesome. Like that's why we do this. The free time, the financial
For sure. I
stability.
mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
And it's amazing. And a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, yeah, but this is the truth. I get more out of seeing someone that I'm mentoring do very well and successful than I do out of having my own green day.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I 100% feel the same way. Literally seeing like you having a big day or seeing like someone have a big day. Like even when I had the 100K on Meta the other day, which still I was like numb to it, but like I think I literally felt more like pure joy. Like I get more excitement when I see like Beep getting a 2K withdrawal, right? Or like, which is a former Mastermind 1 student, shout out, got a 2K withdrawal on her funded account. Huge shout out, but seeing her, right? Or like seeing like Dr. Pital find success, right? Like, and just like, just crazy to see the progress from everybody so far. And that brings me so much joy, right? Like it like, you can say whatever you want. I don't care because I know how I feel on the inside, right? And I know how you feel. And that shit, it's like making a difference in somebody's life, right? Like it really is. So, so you have a few students that you primarily work with on like a more in-depth basis. Yeah, you work more than just one lesson. It's something where it's like consistent working with them for overtime frequently, right?
Yep, I can physically say I have my own like mentees now.
Yeah. Which dude, it's got to be a fucking cool feeling. Yeah,
it's such a weird feeling too because you're like you are the thing like changing people. Like you see the progress that's happening. Yeah, and sometimes it's in a few lessons, sometimes it's in more. But one of the best things is like when you're in the middle of a lesson and you just hear when something clicks. Yeah, and you're like, okay, now we have that click. Now we focus on the next one because it's not like it. Most people think like, oh, all of a sudden trading clicks and you're some successful, profitable trader. It's a hurdles. You're running like the 100-meter hurdles. Yes. Where you get over one and there's another one right down the road. You got to get over that one.
It's usually a little bit higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time. And the problem is it's not just like a hurdle and then flat. It's a hurdle and you got a valley you got to get through. Then you dive over the next one.
Absolutely. It is a series. There's this line in a TV show that I really liked. They kind of stuck with me for trading when it's like, you know how people say like when you get back up, or excuse me, when you fall down, you got to get back up. It's like this guy was like, fuck that. When you fall, you just keep falling. You just got to keep crawling through. You just got to keep in trading. I really feel like that's the case. It's like you're going to get knocked down so many times that at some point you just got to figure out, rather than get back up and get knocked down, you got to figure out your way to crawl through it, right? And just push through and just continue to go on all levels. So, yeah, that really stood out to me. So, okay, you graduate, you do the Mastermind 1, you then just twist the strategy on your own. Now you have mentees of your own, you have people that you are working with. And then this January, or was it December or January, when you decided to ultimately go full-time as a day trader, right? Because you were previously working with the family a little bit still?
Yeah, so it was actually January 1st, but one thing I did want to touch on the last thing is how you said, how you have to keep crawling out and everything. Yeah. What I tell people is, because what happens is everyone gets in these ruts and they're like, all right, I suck as a trader, this isn't going to work. To me, it's not about the ruts that define you as a trader, it's how you get out of them. Yeah, I love that. And it's just, because everyone gets in them, they're like, this is me, like I suck. It's not about like getting in them, how deep you go, it's how you get the hell out.
Yes. Yes, and getting out is fucking hard. It can be brutal. But if you're able to get out, there is a way out. You just have to find it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's always a way out.
Yeah, because the one thing about trading that most people overlook, especially myself in the beginning, is you learn more about yourself than anything else. Yeah. Like, there's no job that's going to teach you, like, hey, you're a degenerate, you have a greed problem, and you have zero emotional intelligence here. Yeah, yeah. You have to figure all that out.
You got to figure that shit out on your own. Yeah. Yeah. 100%, bro. I could not agree more. All right, so you figured yourself out a little bit, and now January comes around. You make the decision that you're going to go full-time as a trader. This is now your main thing that you do. This is now your main source of income. This is now your main job. What were some of the things going through your head when you were making that decision?
What the hell am I doing?
Yeah. Shit's scary, bro. I remember making the jump myself. Shit's scary, for sure.
So this is the weirdest part for me. December, because I knew I was coming. December sucked. I was stressing like a motherfucker. Yeah. Nonstop, just stressing. And then the first 2 weeks in January, nothing but stress. Just because it's like, all right, you really get the hesitant, like, can I do this? Do I need to do this? Where am I going to get my paycheck from? How am I going to pay my bills? But then come like towards the end of January, I was like, all right, I'm actually like, this is actually less stressful than working my last 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Even if I'm like, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from, because on a day-to-day, you don't.
That's part of being a day trader.
Yeah.
You do not know.
It was so much less stressful. I don't have to worry about pleasing anybody but myself now.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to work for myself and be able to grow that way. And I finally can do it. And all I really do is, because I don't make some astronomical amount of trading money.
Yeah.
I simply just live below my means and at the moment cheap. Like yeah.
And that's what's so crazy to me, bro. And I think that social media has put this out there that like, and honestly, everybody, I'm probably guilty of, perpetuating this stereotype myself, but that you need to be making like $1,000 a day to be a full-time day trader. $1,000 a day is $250,000 a year. That is a very high salary that most Americans could not fathom making. $400 a day trading is $100,000 a year. Most Americans still can't fathom making, like, that is a high salary. That's a hard target. And social media has absolutely distorted this view of us that, like, if you're a full-time trader, you must be making $50K a day. It's like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, is a six-figure salary not good enough for you? Like, a six-figure salary is good enough for me, right? Like, I think that's one of the biggest things that gets lost in social media trading, for sure. And again, I'll apologize for my part in it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, as you build that intelligence, like with money and the financial intelligence there, you understand, like, hey, obviously I live in an area where it's pretty cheap to live. Luckily, I don't live in California or LA. It's prices out here a little much, I can tell you that. But I can look at it and I'm like, all right, I only need to make this minimal amount to be able to live day to day, and that's it. Like, I can live off of what some people would look at like, how?
Right. Yeah.
Just because it's not needed. I don't need this extravagant stuff. I don't need all these special items and stuff like that. And I know if I stick with it later in life, yeah, that'll come. It's part of the career as long as I'm consistent with it. Mm-hmm. But for now, I'm just enjoying life. Like, I don't.
Yeah. It's so crazy because it's like some other traders might look down and be like, oh, you should make more, like making more before you go full time. And it's just like, wait, there are people who have full-time 9-to-5 jobs that are making less.
Yeah.
And they're working 9 hours a day while I'm working 2 hours a day. Like, no, I'm good. Thanks, though. Like literally $400 a day on average is $100,000 salary per year. Coming out of college or coming out of your early 20s to be making $100,000 is an insane. For reference, when I graduated college at age 22 or 23, my first job, I was making $55K a year, right? So, like, it was significantly less. That's an average of $200 a day, right? And it's just crazy because I feel like if you tell somebody that, hey, I'm a full-time day trader, I make $55K a year, sometimes due to social media, again, it's almost like looked down on some level, but it's like, how is that bad? Like, how is that not good? Like, how is that not attainable? Especially if you live in a place, it's not expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and it also goes back to what we talked about before. Let's say, because before I went full-time, I was making around that like 60, 65 number. Mm-hmm. So let's say this year I pull in 65 again. Okay, well, yeah, everyone's gonna be like, you're still making the same amount of money. But most days, there's days I'm done by 10:30. I have 7 hours to do whatever I want to do.
So much of your time back.
Yeah.
So much of your time back. You have literally like instantly gotten such a huge chunk of your time back. It's so worth it. So I do want to ask, this particular week, your trading week, and again, I think you only traded what, like 3 days?
Technically 4.
Technically 4. Yeah. So how'd you do this week?
So this week, I'm pretty happy with it. It's not like obviously some extravagant number like we talked about, but I ended up around, I think,
$1,200 in a week,
yeah.
Right? See, $1,200 in a week, you times that by 4, that's $4,800 a month, right? In an individual month, pre-tax, all that, yada, yada. Literally, my paycheck from that $55K a month job, right, was like half that, pretty much half that, right? Yeah. Like, it's crazy to think that that's what you're like able to be pulling in on a weekly basis. So, bro, I just like, before we go anywhere else, I just want to say I'm proud of you, man. Like, genuinely, bro, like, to see the progress you have made, it has been absolutely insane. It's something that's like inspiring to me. And one thing that I'll toot your horn and boost you up a little bit about this, but puff the ego up a little bit. I've told this to people before, but one day Ron G will surpass me because you are now 2 years fully into trading, right? Which is crazy.
Just over like 2 years and 2 months.
2 years and 2 months, which is crazy. You went full-time faster than I did. You went full-time a year after Mastermind 1, which is crazy and not I don't think that should be the expectation for most people. To 1 year to then full-time trader is definitely not. But what I've always said is that, and literally there's a member in our room, Mason, who I definitely remember having this conversation with him. I literally think that one day in the future you will surpass the like numbers I'm doing, just because of like, for me, I had to fight really bad habits as a trader. Like I had these really degenerate discipline habits, like, and I think they all stemmed from my dad making me a pizza when I was drunk coming home one night. But, I have these these degenerative habits sometimes that I can still like, I'll go on tilt or like, and it's been harder for me to fight those. I see much less of those in you, right? Like, not that you don't have tilt moments, everybody does, right? But like, I think that your discipline and your patience is only just going to project you like further and further and further in this world. And I'm so excited to see it, man.
Yeah. And the one thing I can say is obviously I would not be where I am without you taking the mastermind, everything like that. I mean, you lit a fire under my ass, especially ghosting me. You're stubborn, remember? So, I mean, that's just the biggest thing there is all of that from perspective. But the one thing that I want to say is I do still have degenerative tendencies. But like we talked about, I got in a funk a few weeks ago and I was stuck for a few weeks of just over trading nonstop. Like it happens. Remember, we're humans. People make mistakes.
Always.
It's just what you do to get out of those. And you actually kind of saw what I did to get out of that because my alarm went off today.
So earlier today, Ron G's alarm went off and it was like 10:30 in the morning, and it said something like, "Are you good?" Like you just checking in, right? And it was basically a mental check-in alarm, right? Yeah. Where it's basically 1 hour into the day, like, "Hey, you still at the desk? Like, if you're at the desk, it better be a good reason why you're here. If not, you should go fuck off." And I literally saw it, picked up your phone. I was like, "Is this you?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." I thought that was crazy cool to see, bro. Just because that's something that I've definitely utilized in the past for sure too. And it's little things like that that can make all the difference, like all the difference.
Yep. And I actually kind of got that from the book Atomic Habits.
Okay.
And it's one of the psychology books that I preach. It's not a trading psychology, but it's just general life. And one of the biggest things that he talks about is everyone has like bad habits. And it's not like just ignoring the habits because they're going to happen at times. It's making them harder. So I was over trading. Biggest thing I did is make it harder. For me to literally overtrade the entire day, I have to sit through 2 alarms calling myself out, making sure I'm still okay to trade.
Yeah.
If I do that, I'm in a pretty bad tilt.
Yeah. Like if you have to go through, if you actually ignore both alarms and do that, then like there's not much that could stop you.
And these alarms are an hour and a half apart. It's not like they're like right at the same time.
Like that usually is a moment which people you'll get there. That'll happen sometimes, but it's just a matter of managing them as much as you possibly can. My dude, this has been an incredible discussion. I want to make sure to give you the chance before I ask you some questions about what's next in life. Is there anything trading related that you feel like you want to cover, make sure that everybody knows or is familiar with, just so that we don't leave anybody with some great advice that we gets left unsaid?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I've really brought into perspective with myself is, and I teach this a lot to other people, is a lot of people will get focused on P&L and they'll be like, all right, I'm up $400 today. I want $500. So it's like, all right, it's just $100. Well, you risk like 100 to make that 100, yada, yada. Well, what happens is you end up losing the $100 and people are like, all right, it's okay. I just lost $100 on the day. Well, if you do that every day, you actually just lost $25,000 a year.
Right.
Now, if you put that into bigger perspectives, it's just $500. No, it's $125,000 a year. Or I'm only up $500. I want $100 more. Why are you not okay being up $125,000 a year?
Interesting. So kind of like extrapolating that daily P&L and being like, man, if this were my average, this is what I would end up at the end of the year, and thinking about it that way.
Yeah. And what typically I feel happens there, just from my personal perspective, is you're focusing on the day-to-day. You start to get in that, hey, get rich quick kind of mindset. Yep. And I try to get myself out of that as soon as possible. Because anytime I get in, I get broke pretty fast.
Yeah. Dude, whenever you get into that mindset and whenever you get into like, the way that I'll catch myself now sometimes is I'll look at the R to R on a trade and I'll be like, can this get me like a couple 100%? And once I get like, I want to find something that can get me like multiple 100%. And as soon as I start thinking that way, I'm like, close the computer. You need to take a step back. You're not thinking, your priorities aren't in the right space right now. Right. Yeah. So that's great advice, bro. I think that's awesome. When you think about these decisions, like, oh, I'm just going to risk an extra $100. It's like, okay, beware. You do that every day. You're risking an extra 25 grand on the year. You really want to do that? right? Like, I think that's an awesome way to think about it, man.
Because $100 isn't going to change lives, right?
No.
But when you compound it like that and look at it in the longer term, that can impact a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
how many of you would love an extra $25,000, $50,000 a year? Probably all of you.
Right? Yeah. Yes. And it all starts with that discipline, right? With that discipline. So, all right. Before I ask you about life, to close this out, is there any tip or trick that you have for somebody who's looking to increase their discipline, right? If there's somebody out there who's been struggling with following their trading rules, is there any tip or trick or something that you would say, hey, maybe give this a shot and it can help you follow your trading rules?
So one thing I do every day now is, like, depending on, you kind of have to reverse engineer whatever you're having issues with. And that's where a lot of people really need help. So, I mean, reach out to people you know that have been there, done that, but that's not the point of this. The biggest thing for me is my psychology. So obviously my analysis has been on point. I'm more than happy with it. So I know if I'm lacking in trading, it's my psychology. That's what 98% of traders are lacking in, most likely, because that's what holds everyone back. But when you really start to look at it, what I did was every morning I would write down exactly like how I feel, what I was doing that day, and like what I expect out of that day. So if I wake up and I'm groggy and I didn't sleep very well, I write it down because I'm like, hey, don't be a dick. This isn't the day to win. We pick and choose our battles. You taught it. Like, you taught me this. You preach it a lot. We pick the battles we need. And what I would do is, because most people, the one thing with trading is if you make a mistake, it's easy to brush under the rug. You don't have a manager. You don't have anyone above you. You don't have anyone calling you out.
Yeah, you have no boss.
Especially if you're not talking to someone daily. And I highly recommend finding someone you can do that with. But you can just push it under the rug and be like, all right, that was yesterday, whatever, we're on to tomorrow, right? That's in the past. Well, it's not in the past. Most of the time you're going to redo it until you fix it.
Yep.
So I would write down exactly what I was feeling in the morning. And most of the time, if I had a losing day, I would look down and be like, don't be a dick on the papers written right in front of me. And I was a dick.
And you were a dick. And you ignored the way that you were feeling that morning.
Yeah. You're basically calling yourself out on the carpet.
Yep. And you literally, I like that. You're calling yourself out on the bullshit. And it's like giving yourself like call out, pre-market, kind of giving yourself that check-in. I like that. I like that as a way to increase discipline. Really, I'm a big fan of that. One. I might start implementing.
Yeah, it made a big impact on my trading.
100%, bro. All right, so Ron G trades now, full-time trader now, has students of his own, now cashing in. Ron, I have to ask, do you have any plans for what's coming next in life? Are you open-minded? Do you have any clue what's because right now you're in Cleveland and you're living right outside of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Whole time. Do you plan to stay there? Do you thinking maybe move out to a coast one day? Maybe out in California.
I know someone who wants me on the West Coast, but don't know who that could be.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the moment, the biggest thing for me is I want to explore while I'm young, especially.
Yeah.
And one thing that actually is something I really want to do is what you did.
Yeah.
When you lived back with your parents and you wanted to check out LA. So what did you do? You rented an Airbnb for a whole fucking month.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm making enough.
Airbnb for a month. I want to experience this. Yeah.
Because no matter what, I don't want to fully reside full time in Ohio. I mean, I have family there, stuff like that, but there's more to life for me.
For sure.
I just know there's a lot more out there.
Yeah.
So I either want to figure out like somewhere to move over time or try the Airbnb route for a few weeks here and there, travel for a while, especially in the winter, and just see new things, experience new things. Because life, that's why we're in this. We're in this to experience life, get more out of life, not just be stuck in a 9-to-5 or something like that.
I could not agree more, man. I mean, it's so funny. People will do anything to become a full-time day trader for the freedom. Then they spend the entire day sitting behind screens, not using that freedom. And it's a huge flaw. So I love it, bro. I think the world is your oyster. I think that you are going crazy places. I am so happy to have you a part of our team. I'm so happy to see where you take this. I'm so excited to see where you go as an individual. This has been an incredible interview, a great first episode, and seriously, bro, thank you so much for everything. I'm so excited to have you, dude.
Thank you
it
for
has
having
been
me.
an awesome one, man. It has been great. With that being said, Ron, as you all know, is from Ohio. It's bright and sunny out here in California. Now that he's here for a few days, I think it's time that we explore a little bit, get out of the house a little bit, and show him around downtown LA and have a good old time. So thank you very much for watching this episode of the Rakes Takes podcast. We'll be releasing episodes on a weekly basis, so please stay tuned for the announcement of our next episode release. And as always, have a great rest of your night.